And welcome back to a fantasy football podcast. I'm your host, Jono. As always, my co-host, Chris, here is another episode of the Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. And today we're going to be talking about three players that Chris and I agree on that maybe ADP does not. And then we're also going to talk about three players that the two of us disagree on, and we've butted heads quite often in conversation about them. So before we tune in, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification button, because that season's coming right around the corner and you're going to want all the advice during the waiver wire, during Thursday Night Football, and right before your starts and sits that you need to figure out on the weekend games.
We are within a week.
Yeah, very close. It's exciting. Like it's about to be Christmas Day. So
football season is upon us.
Well, let's talk about one of the most polarizing takes that you and I have, because I wouldn't say that all the big experts out there are disagreeing with us, but I've seen way too many that are way too high on this player, and that's Bijan Robinson. We've seen very little sample size this preseason to say, like, with the eye test, he looks good. He looked sharp. He looked fast, all that. But to say that he is a first-round pick automatically is to say that you're taking the risk that he's going to get the output that, like I said before, Saquon Barkley, and the same output that I think Barkley's probably the closest comparison, because he went to a place that didn't have the best offensive line, that the team wasn't the best either. The only difference is he didn't have a veteran quarterback and receivers around him. He's now in Bijan's coming to a situation without one main wide receiver and one main tight end and a question mark at the quarterback position. In a situation that if you're Atlanta, it would be better off if you knew you were going to be the worst team in that division and then just tank for Caleb Williams. However, they're in the race for this division because that division is so bad. I still just don't see a scenario and a pathway to the volume that Saquon had and the volume that Zeke had, two of the number one, number two fantasy running backs at their rookie seasons, just because you have actually viable running backs behind Bijan Robinson.
Well, I mean, that's the whole argument. It's like I actually think the fact that they don't have receivers, the fact that they have question mark at the quarterback position, the fact that like they're not a pass-heavy team is in favor of Bijan. And don't get us wrong, we both think that Bijan is going to be an immense talent in this league. We really do. Like, I think that he has the chance to be the best running back in the league. It's just not this year. And they're going to run the ball more than anyone else in the NFL. But the fact is that unlike Saquon and unlike Zeke, he's coming into a crowded backfield where they have a second-year running back. And is Bijan better than Tyler Algier? Yes, he is. But they're still going to use Tyler Algier. To think that Bijan is going to get 250 plus touches is, I think, a real stretch of someone's imagination. I think the hype was on Bijan just early on when they drafted him, because they're like, Atlanta doesn't need a running back, and then Atlanta went and drafted Bijan. They're like, oh my God, look, the best running back goes to the best running football team. He's going to come in and he's going to be a 2,000-yard rusher. That's not going to happen this year. It really, like, Cordell Patterson is going to take third down receiving work. So everyone's like, Bijan is a good route runner. He's a good pass catcher. But Patterson's going to eat into some of that. And then Algier's going to eat into some of his rushing attempts. So you have two different running backs in that backfield that are going to eat into two separate parts of his game that he's good at. So I just don't see the scenario where he's going to get 250 plus touches.
Well, I slightly disagree. I could see 250, but we're talking about
I'm saying
Saquon,
plus, 350 plus.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley, and you're talking about touches. Well, Saquon Barkley had 97 targets, and what do you have, like 70-something receptions his rookie season, or he had 90-something? I'll look it up in a second. But in terms of carries too as well, he was upwards of like 300. Obviously, Zeke went over 300 in carries. But
for sure,
this is the biggest thing to me, and is you're going to say that Bijan should go ahead of Saquon Barkley, who had 295 carries last year and should have the same, if not more again, plus 57 receptions. You're talking about Nick Chubb, who had over 300 carries, had over 5 yards per carry average, and he's supposed to probably get more receptions too in the passing game this year. He already had an uptick last year. And you're talking about Derrick Henry, who's going to have 350 carries under his belt. And you could even argue Josh Jacobs is going to get another 320, 330 carries himself. Like, I don't see those carries being under Bijan's name. And listen, I'd be the first one to eat my words if Atlanta decides to do that, but it would be dumb of them. It would be a repeat of what the New York Giants did to Saquon early in his career, and now you're looking at it here. Is they're afraid to sign him for big money, and other teams will probably be afraid to sign them for big money because of quote-unquote wear and tear. You just don't want to risk the injury. I mean, Bijan had great volume in college. He can handle the volume, and that's not what we're talking about here. It's, will Atlanta be willing to give him that volume or ease him in his first year and use him? Because how many games are they going to really be competitive and need to be in the game? And how often, the other question is, how often is Desmond Ridder going to check down to him too as well? So I just think the scenario to see the volume that Saquon had and the volume of rushing that Zeke had are, like, you can argue that's the ceiling for him, but I just don't think it's in the realm of opportunity for that to happen. It's a different scenario. It's apples to oranges.
Yeah, I mean, when Zeke came into the league, DeMarco Murray the year before ran for 1,826 yards behind that offensive line. There was nobody else in that backfield when he came in.
Yeah.
There wasn't like a legit threat to him. There wasn't, a second bell cow running back. Tyler Algier carried the workload last year.
He was a 1,000-yard rusher, over 4 yards per carry. It was a solid outing for a rookie.
Right. And he's a second-year young guy. And then the year before, Cordell Patterson was like the shock of fantasy football, the performance that he had running behind that line. When Saquon came into the league, same scenario, right? There's no one there to take away touches or threaten him. Yeah. And again, not saying that Algier is going to be commanding 50% of the workload there, but let's just say he takes 30%, and let's say Cordell Patterson takes 15%. So is that going to give enough touches? So let's talk about this real quick. So me and you both agree that I wouldn't take him in the first round. Like, I would not touch him. So I will say I will take him in the second round. If he falls to the middle of the second round, I think I would probably take him over Tony Pollard. I would take him probably over Travis Etienne. I would take him over Aaron Jones, that kind of next tier down. But
I agree, like, with the Tony Pollard comment. And just a quick side note, I think Tony Pollard and him are both at the same opportunity to finish with the same number of carries and receptions. Like, they're going to be very similar in that scenario because both teams aren't going to lean in on these guys heavily. Now, the Cowboys obviously have a better offense. They're going to have a new offensive coordinator, it's a little bit more balanced. And the other thing you got to understand too is in Atlanta, they're going to have to see what they got in Desmond Ridder. Like, they got to decide, is this going to be the guy of our future? And if he's not, so you're going to have to pass the ball. You're going to have to take opportunities to pass the ball. The reason why Atlanta was the number one team in rushing last year wasn't just because of their running game from the running backs. Marcus Mariota tuck and ran the ball so much when he started at the beginning of that season. And I don't think that's going to be the case for Desmond Ridder. He can do it. He's athletic, but they're going to need him to pass the ball. They're going to need to get to their other big targets in Drake London and Kyle Pitts. So to me, I think it would do a disservice to not only Bijan Robinson early in his career, but it would do a disservice to the whole football team to just say, let's give him the ball every single time. I mean, looking back at the Saquon numbers, like I said, he had 260 carries and he had 91 receptions on 121 targets for the New York Giants, his rookie season.
And that made him the RB1.
Yeah, and so you see what it needs to take. And I just don't see those numbers for Bijan. Like, maybe he gets 225 rushes, maybe 250 rushes. But again, every other running back that we're saying is going to go before him is going to do that plus more.
Right.
And then they're all going to, say he gets 50 receptions, which is a pretty good number for a running back, a receiving running back, maybe even 60. Saquon's going to do that. You could get Nick Chubb in the 40s. You could get Derrick Henry in the 40s. Although Tajay Spears looks pretty good. So to me, like, to say that, especially like you look at Eckler and McCaffrey, he should not be drafted over those two guys. Like, there's no scenario.
No, but like, I've seen so many rankings where he's the number 3 running back, and that's in standard and PPR. And
we've seen him at the number 1 in PPR before.
Yeah,
which is
that's
crazy.
It's absurd to me. It's absurd. It's like, I can't wrap my head around it where someone can rank those guys over the most elite running backs in the league. And yeah, he comes into a good scenario, but he's not replacing Algier. Algier didn't get cut. And let me just throw this on top. We have no idea what the goal line work is going to look like. We don't know if Cordell Patterson is going to touch it. We don't know if Algier is going to get it. We don't know if Bijan is going to get it.
Yeah.
So I think we have a pretty good scenario, like in Detroit, where with Gibbs and Montgomery, like Montgomery's going to get a lot of the goal line work. We know that. So in standard, he's going to be ranked a little bit higher. Gibbs should be going in around the third, fourth round, and he's going to be heavily involved, but he's not going to get goal line work. So if the touchdown numbers aren't there for Bijan, good for him. He ran for 1,200 yards. Good for him. But if he has sub 8 touchdowns, he's not even going to crack the top 5. Yeah. And that's really the scenario. I don't really see him cracking the top 5 at the end of the season. I think he very well could be number 6, 7, 8, all the way through 10. I think that is his ceiling is 6. All right. I just can't see him outproducing guys that are true bell cows, like Chubb, like Henry.
But outside of injuries and complete fall flat on your face, seasons, whether it could be from McCaffrey down to Henry, if one of those guys completely falls flat. I agree. Right. I mean, the last thing I will say is I just did a PPR draft this evening. It was a 10-team PPR. I was the number 9 pick. I went Tyreek Hill. I swung around. I did take Bijan second round, 12th pick, so that technically would have been a first rounder in a 12 team. But I took him over Derrick Henry just for upside there. But it took me a lot out of my mind to not press the home run button on Henry or one of the other receivers.
That was a mistake.
I may regret it. It's my least favorite pick that I made. I just said to myself, you know what? It's a family league. It's a friendly league. It's not necessarily a major money league. I was like,
crush your family.
This is the first time I've drafted him. Period. This is the first time I've drafted him.
Yeah.
And it may be the mistake I made. I'll tell you what, I'm not doing it in our league because I'm drafting 3. So, we've talked enough about Bijan. We said plenty of our piece there. In the comments, please tell us your thoughts. I think we're going to have a lot of people opposing our view, but I'm sure there's plenty of truthers out there that do think at the end of the day that Bijan may not be the second coming of one of these other running backs in his rookie season. I think he's going to be a fantastic running back in the NFL. I think he's very talented. It's more of a scenario thing than it is talent, end of the day.
Right.
So there's 2 players here. We'll start with one out of Chicago that we think people are very low on, and we are ourselves finding the opportunity to draft him at the ADP value right now, but we are also drafting him earlier than ADP because the scenario for him as the RB1 on his squad in Chicago is already there. He's earned it, and that's Khalil Herbert. He's been going in a lot of sleeper drafts around round 9. If you haven't had a chance to watch our mock drafts that we did this previous week for our mockathon, go ahead and look. Chris was drafting Khalil Herbert in the 9th. Herbert in the 9th. That's his new team name. Khalil Herbert was a fantastic running back the past couple seasons behind David Montgomery. And anytime David Montgomery got injured, Khalil Herbert came in and he blew up 100-yard games. He has home run hitting ability, and that's what David Montgomery didn't have. And that change of pace for Chicago was great. But it just proved that if you look at the yards per carry and Khalil Herbert versus what David Montgomery did, I think you'll see that there was a great disparity, and it's not like they were running behind 2 different offensive lines. And I just think that the opportunity is going to be there. These teams are going to be scheming against Justin Fields, not against Khalil Herbert. And so you may get some more edge rush, pass rush opportunities where he hits the hole and the D end is passed or linebackers behind him in the back already, and all of a sudden he's got wide open 6-7 yard carry before he gets tackled. And we saw a lot of that in this past year. Why do you love Khalil Herbert in these drafts besides his value?
Yeah, I mean, the value is just absurd because especially if you're going like 0 RB and you're looking for some late round running back value, or you're going for bench spots at running back. Let's look at the 3 guys above him in ADP. And let's look at the 3 guys below him in ADP. All right. The 3 guys above him are Rachaad White, DeAndre Swift, Brian Robinson Jr. The 3 guys below him are Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon, and Zach Charbonnet. All right. Of those guys, of all the guys I just listed, Khalil Herbert is probably going to command the most targets or the most rushes out of any of them. Now,
Yeah.
I'll make the argument for DeAndre Swift because if DeAndre Swift ends up being the one and only guy there, then he's clearly in a better scenario and you can get him at a really good value. But he's another one where like the value is really good there. But Khalil Herbert going in the 9th round is like taking candy from a baby. The guys that are going around him in that scenario or in those rounds, you're not going to get a running back that has that kind of potency. When guys are snagging up like their first quarterback off the board or a tight end, you're going to be sitting there with Khalil Herbert. And again, like Jono said, this guy has home run ability. He's proven it in the short time that he's had. I mean, I know he's had some down games in there too, but when he's commanded 20 plus touches, he's had 20-point games, 150-yard games, multi-touchdown games, and he can do this. And we saw it on a bad team. Now, we all expect Chicago to be much better this year. Overall on offense, they're going to run more plays. And that was kind of the downside last year of the Chicago rushing offense, was that they just didn't run enough plays. There was like big play from Justin Fields. They scored a touchdown. There's constant 3-and-outs or 1 first down series. I think they're going to sustain the ball a lot more. The rushing attack is going to be a lot better. Justin Fields is going to be able to open up the passing game a lot more this year now that he has DJ Moore. And it's going to open up more for Khalil Herbert to run. Now, and especially now with Deontay Foreman getting injured, I mean, I know Roschon Johnson should take some carries away from him, and that's fine. I mean, like we know that this is going to be he's not a bell cow. Khalil Herbert's not going to be a bell cow. But he's a guy that
not easily
gets 60% of the workload in that backfield.
Well, that's what I'm going to say is, so you take Dave Montgomery out of the picture and you put Khalil Herbert in Montgomery's volume and usage. Montgomery was around 65 to 75% of snaps last year. Khalil Herbert, when Montgomery was in and healthy, was only around as high as 40 at any point and as low as 28. So like he was around the 30-40 range. So you do the math. If you flip-flop, you give Roschon Johnson that workload there and you give the David Montgomery snap counts to Khalil Herbert, you're going to see a complete difference. You're talking about Khalil Herbert with 129 carries last year, had a 5.6 yards per carry. You could round up to 5.7. 4 touchdowns, 731 yards. David Montgomery last year had literally 71 more carries. He had a 3.99 yards per carry, only 800 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He had 1 extra rushing touchdown. And Khalil Herbert did have a receiving touchdown. They didn't pass that much to the running backs last year because obviously Fields tucked and ran a lot. But if you just split that snap percentage up to Herbert and give the others to Roschon Johnson, who I think is going to be the guy you want to own as a backup there, even if Deontay Foreman is healthy, just because I think there's a reason they drafted this young buck. Herbert should flourish here. Like you give him 200 to 220 carries, he's going to have a top 15 finish as a running back in this league, and you're getting him in the 7th, 8th, 9th round, depending upon where he is. If he's sitting there for you in the 7th round and you only have 2 running backs, this guy should be your 3rd. Don't look anywhere else. Hammer that button because there's a chance he's your flex player moving forward. And if you do have 3 running backs already and you're in the 8th or 9th round and he's still sitting there, this is not like, oh, I wonder what's wrong with Khalil Herbert. This is ADP is wrong with Khalil Herbert. And it's not on our side. If it came up to our rankings, he is up there a lot higher than he should be. And I agreed with the DeAndre Swift. To me, DeAndre Swift, he's the better athlete. He's the freak show, and he's on a better team. But again, you're talking about a team that doesn't pass that much to the running backs either. So how many rushing they may both equal the same amount of rushing opportunities. And Chicago, based on a 5.6 rushing average, it'll be neck and neck, and especially because I don't see as many rushing touchdowns in the red zone for Fields as you will see in Philly because the body of Jalen Hurts is so easy to just plug it in within the 3 rather than Herbert. But to me, I think you can't pass up the opportunity on Khalil Herbert. His ADP is way too low, and for our cases in our draft, I hope it stays that way. And the same thing for your draft. You better hope it stays that way. And your league's not watching this, even though I hope they should. They should be liking and subscribing. But if they're not watching this, you've got an edge on them.
And if you draft Herbert in the 9th, that should be your team name.
Correct.
Herbert in the 9th.
He's a league winner. He's honestly a league winner in my opinion. Because he's a guy that people are not drafting as an RB2 and will finish as your RB2.
Right.
And you'll be happy with it. And that's the same thing that goes with this next guy we're going to talk about. Miami running back Raheem Mostert. He is the starter there. He's got a full grasp on it. Obviously, Jeff Wilson's probably the next man up, and Devon Achane, once he gets back from his injury, will definitely have a role in the passing game, and will have some change of pace because he's sneaky fast. But Raheem Mostert has had the trust of Mike McDaniel before he came over to Miami. There's a reason why he came to Miami. There's a reason Wilson came to Miami. And Raheem Mostert's not slow himself. He's a fast running back as well.
He's track speed.
He is track speed. So he gets a toss around the end. He's going to have some big chunk plays. And the thing about Raheem Mostert is he's not a slouch when it comes to the yards per carry himself. He's been on top of the league multiple times in terms of his yards per carry. And last year in Miami itself, he had a 4.9 yards per carry, and on 181 rushes. That is not bad numbers. He had only 3 touchdowns, and he ended up having 31 receptions himself there too. And if he keeps that number at 31, that's like there's RB1s that we're drafting out there that don't get 31 receptions. And having almost a 5 yards per carry, that's Nick Chubb numbers. Last year was the first time he was under 5. He's had 6, 5, 7, 5, 5, 10, 4. Now, obviously, the biggest season he had before this was 137 carries in San Francisco in 2019, 8 touchdowns. He finished as the RB20. Wasn't a 1,000-yard rusher, but he had 891 yards last year and 181 carries. There's a chance he could hit 1,000 yards this year if he stays healthy. That's always been his problem.
I think he had 300-something yards receiving, too. Another touchdown there.
Yeah.
So like him and Wilson were both 1,000-yard all-purpose yards guys. And
yeah, I did 200 really yards. 200 yards.
I did a really early short on this and how both Mostert and Wilson are being criminally underdrafted. And they're undervalued for Devon Achane. And this is another scenario where like Achane, he's nursing an injury right now. But even if he wasn't, Achane isn't going to come in and handle the third down. He's going to handle the third down work. He's not going to handle all 3 downs. And I don't think Mostert and Wilson are either. Like I owned Mostert last year. I ended up getting him in the 14th round. You can go and get Mostert. He's going in most rounds around the 11th or 12th round.
Yeah.
And like that's a steal because again, he's going to be the starter in Miami on a high-powered offense. Yeah, he's not going to be your every week starter, but he could be your RB3. He could be a flex play for you. And he's a good, like, if you're going to round out your team, especially if you have some injuries, like if you want a guy that you can plug and play, he's a guy that you can absolutely do that. Now, I will say this against Mostert is that he's going to be facing a lot of really tough defenses this year, especially front sevens. I mean, the whole AFC East, the whole NFC East, the front sevens there are no joke. So, yeah, that takes a little bit away, but again, the Devon Achane, he's so fast, and he's like milliseconds faster than Mostert is. Like Mostert isn't a 4.5 guy. Mostert is a 4.23 guy. So what are we talking about? Like fractional milliseconds?
Well, the one thing I will say is he faced some tough defenses. Obviously, tough defense in the AFC East. He's facing the NFC East too, some tough defenses. But he faced some tough defenses last year, and he still was multiple times inside the RB10. In fact, he had 3 RB10, an RB9, and RB12 finish on the season. But anytime he had over 14, 15 carries, he was lighting it up. In fact, every time he was over 15 carries, he was lighting it up. And his running style and his runnings is more geared towards outside runs, more of a West Coast, stretch run opportunity, which lends well on a speedy offense versus between the tackles. If you asked him to do the role of something that Zeke was doing or do the role of like a Dameon Pierce, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him. But that's not the way they use him. So the way they use him benefits his running style. It benefits that offense. And don't forget, most defenses aren't going to be stacking boxes because they cannot let Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill loose.
Right.
So because of that, there's going to be some more open opportunities on this, especially in a play action. They run a bunch of play action, so it's also going to open up the run game. I just like him as my RB3 if you go like 0 RB. If you as my RB4 as a bench as a first guy up because he's a flex opportunity if they start just feasting him and certain matchups might be good for you because obviously in standard scoring leagues running backs are going to on average score more points than wide receivers. It's just, to me, a no-brainer. The guy is finishing, I think he finished 20-something last year. He was 27th last year, but he's not being drafted as the 27th running back again this year.
He's the 47th running back off the board. So let me say this. He's 4 running back spots in ADP above Kenneth Gainwell. He's 5 above Roschon Johnson. Both 3 guys, like the number 3 guy on the depth chart in their respective offenses.
Well, all the hype out there for Gainwell is saying Gainwell could be the guy there. That Philly backfield is a little scary, but still, the Roschon Johnson's the perfect example. He's going that close to someone like Roschon Johnson when he should be being drafted closer to someone like Khalil Herbert, or even because I think the same amount of carries for Khalil as Mostert got last year, very similar, because of the amount of snaps they've gotten there and the type of offenses. So,
yeah,
I mean, there's not much else I want to say about Mostert. To me, we already said it. If he's there for you late in the drafts, hit the smash button, take him. Especially if you go 0 running back and you get someone like James Conner, then you get Khalil Herbert in the 9th, and then you get someone like Mostert in the 11th. You're going to be happy with your running back field, because you better be happy about the rest of the team you did when you decided to go 0 running back. And then if you go running back heavy and you get 2 solid guys, and then you're just not happy with the value of these other guys, and you get a Herbert or Mostert that fall to you in those other rounds, take them over the receivers there, because you're not going to find better value at running back in those late rounds besides these guys.
Right.
And Tank Bigsby would be another one deep in this that we like too.
Right.
We're not going to get to him today. But that's because he's not a starter. We're talking about RB1s for their offenses here.
Yep.
Let's talk about a couple that we differ on, and we don't have to get too crazy here. I won't battle, but we'll let each other say our piece, and then we'll give the whole point is I want you to try and change my opinion. So I'm going to start with one that I like that you're off of, and that's Mike Evans. I think you had him as your bust candidate.
Yep.
To me, Mike Evans, he has yet to be under 1,000 yards receiving. He's been a couple seasons where he barely made it over, and he's had injuries here and there, still did it. Obviously, the quarterback situation is going to be Baker Mayfield there. I don't love it, and I don't hate it. There could be worse scenarios. Everybody's saying, well, they're going to pass a lot less than before, and here's my take on Mike Evans. Yes, he hurts not having Tom Brady throwing to him again another season. It hurts not having a cannon of an arm like Jameis Winston or Fitzmagic airing it out to him either. And so, yes, but I believe you're talking about a dominant wide receiver in the NFL. He's been dominant since he came in as a rookie. They're going to find ways to get him the ball, and maybe even in the red zone. And I'm not saying he's going to have 1,000 yards, and I'm not drafting him as my wide receiver 1. But if I'm drafting him as my wide receiver 2, and he gets him like 920, 950, but he gets himself 8 to 10 touchdowns, which is right. It could be in his wheelhouse because he's such a pivotal piece in the red zone. You get yourself good wide receiver 2 numbers there. And that's my take on him. That's why I'm not off of him. And because his ADP is already baked in with the fact that Baker Mayfield is passing to him, it's not like we're talking about Debo here, who's still going super high, who's my bust candidate of the year based on ADP. Evans' ADP is already down on him. And in fact, he's in some ADP, he's below Godwin. And that's why I like him, is because this team is not going to be able to run the ball. They were not able to run the ball last year. They've not proven they could run the ball in preseason this year. There's not been anything out of camp that has said, like, this team is a different rushing offense. This team is going to struggle running the ball. They're going to be in a competitive division where they should win the division. They're going to need to pass the ball against some other better passing offenses in the Saints and some of the other teams they play this season. I just don't see a scenario. Yeah, they're not going to throw as much as they did with Tom Brady. But so what? Knock off, 100 attempts, and you still put them top 10 in attempts, and I think that's where they're going to be. And if Baker Mayfield is a sliver of what he was with the Rams at the end of that season, where he had some of those shining moments and made some beautiful passes, if he's got the competitor in him, it's great. Worst case is they bring in Trask, and Trask ends up becoming the starter, and that's probably better off for Evans on top of that. So I don't see a scenario where it's bad for him. Like, he's going to get the volume there. I just think, to me, I find myself not being able to pass up on him when it falls to where his ADP is. That's all.
There's so many other guys that I would take over Mike Evans. And let's just have a deep dive onto what happened last season. This is with Tom Brady as his quarterback. I know there are injuries to the offensive line, and you look at end of season numbers, and they're really, really deceiving. Okay. So we had 3 games last year where he scored touchdowns. So he had 6 touchdowns on the season, but he only scored in 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, that team barely scored in games, period, too. So
he had a 1 touchdown game, a 2 touchdown game, and then a 3 touchdown game.
Yep.
Okay. In that 3 touchdown game, he also had 207 yards, which was only one of 3 games where he broke 100 yards receiving. And that was with Tom Brady throwing the football, with Tom Brady being able to throw the deep ball to him. Baker Mayfield scares the hell out of me for Mike Evans. And it doesn't scare me because I think Mike Evans is bad, but Mike Evans, his entire career has relied on the deep ball to have those ridiculous blow-up games, like the 200-yard, 3 touchdown game. Okay, Baker's never going to do that with him, ever. And he's never been able to do that throughout his young career. I like Chris Godwin here. I think Chris Godwin should be getting drafted over Mike Evans.
I'm not saying that I don't like Chris Godwin. I'm just saying when we talk about this, I like Evans too.
I mean, listen, again, I don't dislike Evans as a player. I think he's an elite receiver in the league, but I just don't see his game, the way he plays, being able to be sustained by Baker Mayfield. And that scares the hell out of me. Like I've said, I could see him having, 800 yards, 850, 900 yards. All right. But I don't see his touchdowns being over 6. So if you're going to be drafting a 900-yard, 4 touchdown guy or 5 touchdown guy, he's going ahead of Lockett. Go get Lockett. He's going ahead of Brandon Cooks.
Christian Kirk.
Go get Brandon Cooks. Like, that's my thing. Is like there's so many other guys I would rather take over him. I'd take Ayuk over him. I'll take.
Well, I think those guys are low. Like I think Ayuk is low.
Again, that there are guys much later. So if I'm sitting there and is Mike Evans going in the 4th and the 5th round, I'll go take running backs there. I'll go take George Kittle there. I'll go and take my quarterback there. Why go and take Mike Evans? Let someone else deal with it. I'll take Godwin 2 rounds later and be perfectly happy. I'll take one of those other guys that I mentioned and be perfectly happy.
Well, here's the only thing
going after him.
Here's the only thing I will say. He's obviously his air yards has gone down. And it's gone down with Tom Brady. He's obviously doesn't have the gunslingers thrown to him. Like he was having air yards of like over 2,000, which were insane numbers. He obviously, with Tom Brady in 2020, 2021, he had 13 touchdowns and then 14 touchdowns. And then last year, that entire team struggled to score, and he had only 6. However, he still had 15 fantasy points per game on average, which was 13th at the position. But that's what I'm saying. Is like when you look at the numbers and where he's going. He had at 1,100 yards receiving last year on 77 catches. He's going to have 120 targets plus. He's going to catch the ball 70, 80 times. And just his yards per reception being 14 to 17 in his career, I don't see how it's not going to get to that point. And that's all I'm saying. It's like I just think we are taking the fact that Baker Mayfield over Tom Brady is the quarterback situation, and Tom Brady looked terrible last year.
Jono. He missed 1 game last year. There were 4 games that he finished with over 10 points. 4 games.
I know.
That's not an elite receiver. If you're taking a guy in the 4th round, I don't care what the air yards is, and I don't care what the end of season numbers are. What I care about is a guy that's going to post up only 4 games the entire year where he posts over 10 points a game.
He missed 2 games. He missed 2 games last year, by the way.
He missed 2 games. Okay.
He missed 2 games.
He left
early in 1 as well. So I'm just saying. All I'm saying is when it comes down to as your wide receiver 2, in those you're taking a guy who is still the quote unquote wide receiver 1 on his team. The touchdown capital is going to be there. He's not far removed. Like he's going to be a threat in the red zone, and that's all I'm saying. It's like I just think the numbers you're going to give you are there. Yeah, it's a riskier pick, but it's not risky enough to the point where I'm not going to not draft him.
But what is the upside there? That's my question. Is
I just gave you 9. Like, yeah, I
you
can still
think
see him
Baker's
hit.
going to throw 11 touchdowns to him, 13 touchdowns to him?
No, I said
Baker's going to throw 1,200 yards to him?
I said 8 to 10. I said 8 to 10 touchdowns, and I said I could see him being around 950 in yardage. That's wide receiver 2 numbers.
Okay, but that's your ceiling, and you're going to go and waste a 4th-round draft pick on
No,
that?
that's not my ceiling. That's not the ceiling. That's what I'm saying. Realistically, that's what he's going to end up with. His ceiling, I'm telling you right now, he'll have 1,100 yards and he'll have 12 touchdowns.
You think
that's his ceiling?
And hit that ceiling. I think 950. I think 1,000 yards. Listen, I'm going to give it to Mike Evans because he's done it every year he's been in the league. Hit 1,000 yards. I think that's his ceiling. I don't think he's going to score more than 8 touchdowns.
And realistically, yeah. I'm saying realistically, like
they
the last time
Ryan Jensen. No, Ryan Jensen's out for maybe
he was out.
Career.
He was out last year too, and he's still,
Yeah, but look what happened with that offense.
Yeah, and they still try to run the ball a ton. They're not going to be able to do that. They don't have a premier running back. They don't have a Leonard Fournette.
Do you think Baker's going to have the time to drop 5 steps back and throw the ball deep to Mike Evans?
No, but Baker Mayfield's going to be able to make a play better than Tom Brady would. That's all I'm saying.
You're serious?
We don't. Yeah, I think Baker Mayfield's a better athlete than Tom Brady is moving around.
Baker can't throw the ball deep.
He doesn't have to throw the ball deep. He's still having 14 yards per reception, and Tom Brady didn't throw the ball that deep. Go look at Tom Brady's numbers from last year on his deep passing attempts. There's a reason Mike Evans' air yards were at almost the lowest in his career with Tom Brady. It was the highest with anybody else on this team.
Yeah, it's also because again, his numbers are indicative of the quarterbacks that he had throwing him the ball. Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, Tom Brady. All guys that can throw the deep ball, that could sustain those kind of numbers. Again, I like God. I'll take Godwin 2 rounds later.
Godwin's going before him. Godwin's going before him in ADP. They're bang bang. They're like 1 or 2 apart. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's like,
and I'll take Lockett. I'll take Cooks. I'll take Ayuk. I'll take Kirk. I'll take any of those guys above Evans, and I'd be perfectly happy with that.
Okay. And that again, we differ. And my job is to try
Flowers. I can go 3-4 rounds later and take Zay Flowers and be like, love it.
So go ahead, take him as your flex there. Like we're talking about, what is it? What round is he going in currently? Let me see in the most recent draft that we did, mock that we did for here, which again is going to be a standard scoring. Most recent I've seen him go is he's going after DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, all these guys. He is, I think he's right there. Mike Evans went 6th round. How do you not like that ADP?
Because who went around him?
Michael Pittman, Deontay Johnson, Jordan Addison.
Yep.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dot. Those are all the guys that were picked after him.
I would take him. I would still take him over Treylon Burks, and I would still take him over
Brandon Cooks, Gabe Davis.
I'd take him over Gabe Davis. I'm not taking him over Brandon Cooks. I already said that.
Kirk went before him. Mike Williams went before him. Lockett, Godwin, they all went before him.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like he's not as high as he's not as high as people think he really is. Like he's going in 6th round in these drafts. Like again, he's not also a PPR monster. He's only getting about 70 catches a season, 80 catches a season. So again, you're getting him because of touchdown capital. And I'm saying he's going to move in the other direction because they're going to have to pass the ball. They're going to have to pass the ball to score points. It's a decent enough defense to keep them in games. And again, that division is also winnable. So I'm just putting my money in the fact that Mike Evans is a touchdown machine in the red zone. He's done it his whole career. He can still do it. I don't think he falls off a shelf. I'm not betting on that he gets 1,000 yards. This could be the first year without him there, but that's all. Let's move on to our next one, which you are higher than I am on, and that's DJ Moore. And I want to hear why you're so high on him, and I'll let you know my thoughts afterwards.
Well, I think DJ Moore, what his talent level was undervalued on what he was in Carolina. And again, based on the quarterback play that he had there during his time in Carolina, we've seen him consistently be a big play guy, come up with big 50-50 balls, go out there and I get that you brought up a stat when we talked about him earlier on his like 50-50 win rate. And it was lower than I expected, but I still think he's an elite talent there. He's going to eat receptions there. And his numbers were down from last year because Carolina just stunk at throwing the football.
Mhm.
But he's a guy that can easily be, 1,000-yard receiver, an 8-touchdown guy, and I think he gives a legit weapon to Justin Fields. I think the evolution of these quarterbacks, and I kind of said it with all these third-year quarterbacks getting an elite weapon, and you kind of said that he's not an elite weapon, and I do think he is an elite weapon. I think he's a top 20 wide receiver in the league, which would consider an elite weapon. He's a number one receiver on most teams that are out there. And so you put an elite weapon like that with a young quarterback that Justin Fields can throw the deep ball. He had so many drop passes, and I get the overthrows that he had last year, but he's maturing as a quarterback. Jalen Hurts had overthrows. Tua had overthrow. Oh, Tua really never overthrew anyone. But Josh Allen overthrew in his first and second year, and it took those guys a couple of years to develop, especially as a throwing quarterback in the NFL. I think this is the year that we see Justin Fields make a leap as a passer, and in order for him to make the leap as a passer, it's going to be DJ Moore that's going to have to accelerate his play there. And we saw it last year with AJ Brown in Philly. AJ Brown had a blow up year in Philly. Stephon Diggs, his first year in Buffalo, had a blow up year there. Tyreek Hill last year with Tua had a blow up year there. So I'm just going by a trend here. And I've said this too. Like I love trend. Like I love these kind of trends where you've seen like these young, really talented like throwers in college start to figure it out in the NFL, and then as they progress, they get an elite weapon on the outside. Especially a guy I would have loved if D-Hop went there instead. I was pushing for that from the second the offseason started, that I thought D-Hop would be a perfect fit in Chicago, because you give it a weapon like that to a young quarterback that has some issues with accuracy, and D-Hop catches everything. And DJ Moore doesn't catch everything, but DJ Moore is going to win the contested ball. And we saw it in the preseason with the very first pass that Justin Fields has. It's a 65-yard screen to DJ Moore, and DJ Moore took it to the house. All right. Like that's the big ability that DJ Moore has.
But that's okay.
So that's where and listen, like I know I've swayed you a little bit because you drafted him in our mock drafts 3 times. So I know I swayed you a little bit already as to see some of the value. Would I take him in the 4th round or the 3rd round? No, I wouldn't take him there. But his value and like where his ADP is, I think is perfect for where he is. And he's one of those guys that can be a top 15 receiver in the league.
Well, and this is my argument to the whole thing is I think he is a mid to early 4th round ADP right now. And that's the hard part. Is I just don't, and he's probably more than that in PPR. I could even look that up right now. But to me, it's too much based on the same argument you're making for Mike Evans. It's like there's too many guys you like around that are proven, and you'd rather have that person than here. And DJ Moore right now is going wide receiver 20, 50th overall. So he's going right around that 4th round. 5th round. That's for PPR standard scoring. Let's see if he's going a little bit earlier. And this is on Fantasy Pros. But in most of our mock drafts, he's been going. He's going same around there. Running back, wide receiver 19. To me, here's the thing, and I'm not going to be blinded by the illusion of that one screen pass that he took to the house.
Right. It's one play. I'm not going to take a sample size like that.
You have no idea. Like that may have been the perfect play call against the backup defense. Like I'm just saying, I don't know that. But when I look at the numbers amongst his past 2 seasons, he's had multiple routes first man coverage because it's easier to cover just the only guy on the receiving team. But his win rate first man has been like 80th last year. And I think it was like 50th the year before in the league, and according to receivers, even though he's got a top 20 and top 15 targets against man coverage. Yeah, 38th in 2021. And then his target separation versus man is not good either. Like, to me, he doesn't have the metrics that these other wide receiver ones that these rookie quarterbacks are getting really have. Like, you're not talking about someone like Tua comes in and all of a sudden they give him, like, he did great with Waddle, but then they give him Tyreek Hill and unlocks him. Like, yeah, that's an extreme example. But you look at Joe Burrow. Like, Joe Burrow came in and he was pretty good. He had that one injury, but he's pretty good. And then all of a sudden now you give him, he already came in with Higgins and now he's got Jamar Chase. So, like, you're not, to me, DJ Moore is not the caliber receiver those guys are. And I just was watching, and I said this to you on the side, I am not convinced that two things. One, that the passing game is going to evolve that much in Chicago. It should be better, but I don't know what that looks like. And I also am not convinced on the rushing side of Justin Fields. And this is not a Justin Fields talk. I'm not as high of him as other people are. But in terms of passing wise, for Justin Fields, you and I talked about this the other day. If you had watched preseason like we were watching preseason, look at him amongst any other rookie quarterback, any other veteran quarterback when he has in the pocket. He's the only guy standing there flat-footed. The only guy stationary. He reminds me of the throwing mechanics of who? Arm-wise, not the same, but in terms of his lower body, who threw the ball like that? Cam Newton. Cam Newton in the pocket, stationary.
Hey, look at DJ Moore's numbers with Cam Newton.
Yeah. What was his finish? He had his best numbers with Cam Newton. He was 14th in fantasy points per game 1 year. He has never been above 23rd after that. He was 49th as a rookie, but that was his rookie season. Then his big blow-up sophomore season, he had 1,500 air yards, only 1,175 yards. Again, 13.5 yards per reception. That was his second lowest of his career that year, too.
I mean, they had Sam Darnold and P.J. Walker throwing the football.
When? In what year? 2019? No?
No. In 2020 or in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, 2021 he had the most. Yeah, but 2021 he had the most receptions in a single season that he's ever had in his career. 93.
Yeah, again, he was the only person there. Like I'll say, like his receptions is down from where you'd want a guy like that, or where you'd want to take a guy there. But he was number 4 last year in deep targets for a team that really couldn't throw the ball deep. Again, his numbers didn't reflect those, the amount of deep routes that he ran. But he's number 4 amongst all wide receivers in deep routes. If Justin Fields is going to throw the ball deep, and he's going to have to throw the ball deep, then he's going to have to throw the ball to DJ Moore, Claypool, Mooney.
But that's, you just said it. Mooney, that's the deep guy. Mooney was lost for the majority of the season last year. The deep routes had to go to somebody, and he was the only guy there last year. So now there's a couple more targets, targets to go to other mouths to feed. Yeah, he was number 4 in deep targets, but he was 40th in red zone targets.
Yeah.
That was brutal. And guess what? But his ADOT also on top of that was not even it was 19th. It wasn't even top 15. For somebody who had the most air yard share, 48% of air yard share on his team, your ADOT was that low.
Right.
Like, I don't see that.
Listen, there are flaws in DJ Moore. Like, this is not a guy I think I'm in love with. I think his ceiling is going to be more of that 15 or 16 finish. But I think he can have. I think he has that potential. Again, I think if I'm drafting him in the 4th round, I'd probably go that's probably where I'm going to be taking. I would like to take a tight end, or I'd like to take a high-end quarterback.
Yeah, he went before Kyle Pitts. He went before Darren Waller in these mock drafts. He went around. He went after Terry McLaurin, Christian Watson, and D-Hop and Drake London. Those are the ones right before him early in the 4th, same round.
Would you take him or Drake London?
See, that's tough. I don't trust those quarterbacks. Here's what I would do. I would fade on both those guys, and I'd go grab Tyler Lockett, Hollywood Brown, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Mike Evans. I'd grab one of those guys a round or two later.
Right, and that's what
for the same numbers, if not better, opportunity. That's the only thing I think about that.
If he's going to be my wide receiver 2 or my wide receiver 3, that's why I love Lockett so much. And this is more of me loving those other guys more than it's a hate on DJ Moore. But I think I only drafted DJ Moore one time in our mock drafts, and
Hmm.
it's because I had other guys there that I liked that was not going to be able to get, and so I overreached on them to get them in front of DJ Moore.
Yeah.
And because I'm drafting a wide receiver, DJ Moore, I don't want as my wide receiver 1 or 2. DJ
No, and
Moore, I want.
that's why I drafted him in our league. Is I went McCaffrey, Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and I was happy to take a chance on DJ Moore because yeah, if he did, I'm not saying he's a bust candidate for me. I'm just not drafting him, and I'm not convinced that this guy is going to all of a sudden turn a corner because he goes to a new team with a
Sure.
new quarterback. It's not like he has Kyler Murray, who is a fantastic passer, where D Hop goes there,
Yeah,
and
no,
D Hop's so.
I hear your argument. It's fair. It's a fair argument. I would agree with most of what you're saying. I'm not super high on DJ Moore to where I'm going to be drafting him over guys like Lockett and over guys like Cooks. I think those guys are tuned up for good years, and I can get them a couple rounds later. It's a matter of at that position, the other wide receivers that are going right around him. I probably go in like that's not my draft strategy is not to go and get a wide receiver in the 4th round. I'm either going to stack up high or I'm going to take a couple rounds off. Like I think the value on quarterback, tight end, and running back is much better than the 4th round receivers and the 5th round receivers.
And that's what I'm saying. This is at ADP where he's going. I'm not like it's the same reason why I think Debo's a bust candidate in the 3rd round wide receiver. Early 3rd round wide receiver, mid 3rd round. Like to me, that's like he's not going to finish there.
I haven't drafted Debo in any of my leagues.
We agree on him, but we already talked about that. Last note on DJ Moore here is we both aren't saying DJ Moore is going to be bad. I just don't think like that DJ Moore is the opportunity to finish as a top 10 wide receiver that people are blowing it up and thinking to be. I know you don't think that either, but again, to me, I just am completely staying away from him unless he is my 3rd wide receiver and because he falls down to the 5th round or something like that, and I'm stacking heavy 3 in a row.
Well, here's another one. Do you take him or D Hop? I mean, both are in questionable quarterback. Both have questionable quarterbacks. I mean, I would probably lean more towards D Hop anyway because Tannehill has shown that he can throw for that.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was like, Tannehill has proven it to me in the past because he has had 2 seasons in a row in Miami of 4,000 yards, 3,900 yards. And then let's not forget he had 2 back-to-back seasons of 38 and 3,700 yards in 2020 and 2021. And now you give him another target.
The last thing I'll say on DJ Moore is that when you have a scrambling quarterback like Fields, it's going to shift the defense, and the defense is going to get out of position. DJ Moore is great at kind of that backyard football. His play a lot reminds me, he's not as good as Steve Smith, but his play reminds me of Steve Smith. On kind of that, I'm going to go and get the ball on kind of a breakdown play, and I'm going to make something of it. I think that's a huge potential this year on if Fields can shift the defense and scare the defense into and getting out of position. That DJ Moore is great at kind of reading those routes and getting open in space. And then he can do what he can do with the ball in his hands is much better than what those other guys can do. He can break away and he can break up for the long play. So that's that's my closing comment on DJ Moore.
Yeah. And I'll my last piece is a Justin Herbert stat. The guy is in the past 2 years, he has only improved himself by 400 yards passing, and that was on
Justin Fields stat.
Justin Fields stat. Yeah, Justin Fields stat only. Justin Fields, sorry, yeah, Justin Fields stat here. He increased 400 yards passing in the past between 2021 and 2022, and again, that was he played 3 more games. He, on top of that, attempts wise, only had about 50 more attempts on that. His completion percentage is still never been above 60 in those 2 seasons. And his yards per attempt have been no higher than 7.1 yards per attempt. Yeah, so I think, to me, those things hurt DJ Moore than they help DJ Moore.
Yeah, we said this with Khalil Herbert, and it's kind of one of the reasons we like Khalil Herbert is this offense is going to have more plays. They had one of the lowest plays ran in the NFL last year. So they're going to run more plays because they're going to be in more games. There's going to be less 3 and outs. They have more weapons around him. If they if Mooney and Claypool are able to play that number 2 and number 3 role, DJ Moore is going to open them up a lot more to make plays, and that's going to open up more chances to take those shots downfield. Yeah, I'll say Fields needs to improve on his third down conversions. He needs to be a better passer, but he also has had no weapons. So
yeah, no, I don't disagree. I'm just saying, that's our piece on DJ Moore.
Yeah.
I just it's back to the quarterback play there. Can Fields improve that? And is DJ Moore going to be the factor that makes him improve, or is DJ Moore going to be the non-benefactor of bad quarterback play in the passing game? That's all. I just wasn't wowed by it.
I'll go for that ride.
Yeah, just like I'd go for Mike Evans.
Yeah. I don't trust the Baker Mayfield ride.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not tall enough.
Baker Mayfield's thrown for more passing yards and had a better completion percentage than Justin Fields has had. So,
sure.
Especially his rookie season.
Sure.
The last one that we disagree on, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on hit.
Sure, we do.
Is I'm going to go with the big blue, and that's Darren Waller. I have him as my tight end 3. And I think you had him right outside your top 5. And so we averaged him, I think, what did we average him at? Our tight end 5, I believe we did.
Well, I think we just
ranking.
I think that you just took control and defaulted him to talk about him.
Well, it was 3 and 6.
Yeah, we averaged him because you had a couple other guys ranked significantly lower that I had ranked higher.
Yeah. Which is, again, the tight end market out here. But the thing about Darren Waller is obviously if you don't know already, he came into the league with the Baltimore Ravens, and then he left the league and worked himself back into a starting role with the Raiders in 2019, and that was his blow-up year, where he went for 1,146 yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. He went back-to-back seasons, full seasons, healthy ones of 1,100, almost 1,200 yards in 2020, and he had 9 touchdowns in 2020 that put him at number 2 in fantasy points per game, and I think he was tight end 2 or 3 overall. He has not been below number 10 tight end in fantasy points per game when he plays, and that's the caveat in this. I know that's going to be your argument too. When he plays. So to me, his ceiling has already been tight end 2. I think he can still do it, and I'm drafting him in almost all my leagues based on health. The fact that he is going to have a healthy season, because if he does have a healthy season, he could see 145 targets like he did in 2020, because the New York Giants, they have Darius Slayton. They have Isaiah Hodgins, 2 guys that have proven themselves to be good. But the mismatch and how good of an athlete that Darren Waller is, he's the most overall full package pure athlete as a pass catcher for the New York Giants. You've got speed in Jalen Hyatt. You've got speed in Darius Slayton. You've got some big body and good hands in Hodgins. You've got quickness in Wandale and Shepard and stuff, and Campbell. But when you look at the overall big package, he's got the size, he's got the height, he's got the weight, he's got the speed, all stuff that's going to be very difficult for anybody to cover. And he's already got the rapport with Daniel Jones this preseason. I'm saying even if he plays 15 games, he misses 2 games. 15 games, he still finishes top 3 tight end in the NFL, because he's going to be a target in the red zone. He's going to be a target on first down. He's going to be a target because at the end of the day, you're going to have to start putting D-backs on him to cover him. And what are you going to open up? You're going to put a linebacker on one of the slot receivers and open that up. You're like, the Giants are going to create so many mismatches with Darren Waller on this offense. It's going to be fantastic. And we've seen what Daboll has done with Dawson Knox in the past. Dawson Knox was a touchdown machine, especially in the red zone. A lot of mismatches. And Dawson Knox isn't half the athlete that Darren Waller is. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's like Calvin Johnson at the tight end position here. We're talking about...
No one's Calvin Johnson.
I'm just saying
when Darren Waller gets triple teamed...
Yes.
Then you can mention the great Megatron's name.
All right, okay? I'll redact that statement. But we're talking about a guy, a tight end, that when you look at the guys that are being drafted around him, he's a better athlete than Mark Andrews. He's a better athlete than George Kittle. Kyle Pitts is the only other tight end, physically, athletically, that can match him in terms of speed and athleticism out there. And I think he has a better quarterback in Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is going to have a better year than he had last year. I think he rushes for less and he passes for more, and it's going to be all a benefactor of having Darren Waller here. So to me, I could see Darren Waller getting 7 to 10 targets a game easily.
Sure.
Like even more. I can see him even being more. Like for him to get 145 targets in a 16-game season, it's got to be closer to like 9 targets a game. But
I completely agree with everything you said, with every stat that you threw, with every sentiment that you have about the Giants offense. I think he's going to get peppered with targets. I think he's going to be Daniel Jones' favorite target down the field. I think he's going to be a red zone target. I think he's getting the best pass catcher on that offense.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, he's been in the league since 2015, and he's played 2 full seasons. He's only played 2 seasons. He was out of the league for 1 year or 2. Let's say 2 years, because this is
2017 and 2016. That combo.
His sophomore year got cut. He left the Ravens at that point after 6 games or something, and then he missed the entire next year.
And I think he missed a big chunk of 2018 because he only played in 3 games in 2018.
In 2018?
Yeah. Like 2016, then there was no 2017, and then
he played in 4 games.
Yeah, he started 3, I think. I'm seeing 3 games here, but so 2019 is like, to me, everybody who's taken stats from before 2019 like shouldn't even factor in it, because he was like, it's a different world, different player, different thing. 2019 was to me his quote unquote rookie year in the NFL, like his big break year. And since then, yeah, his past 2 seasons, 9 games and 11 games, but 50% of his seasons he's played the full season. That's not a bad number. Like there's running backs out there that aren't going to give you. Has George Kittle played a full season?
No, I was going to bring that up. I think that Kittle has the same kind of injury concerns that Waller does. But I do like Kittle more. Significantly more. The thing with Waller too is he's left a lot of games. So like he'll suit up and play, and then he's left the game after the first quarter with another nagging injury, and especially the last 2 seasons he just couldn't stay healthy. And when you're on a trajectory of multiple seasons in a row where you have these soft tissue injuries or these ankle, a back injury, like his back was what kept him out most of last year, right?
I also think the Raiders were trying to trade him last year, and they didn't want to put him out there. They wanted to keep him
They
healthy.
almost made the playoffs.
I just think they were trying to trade him last year. I think that was my opinion on it. But
they're a game out of the playoffs.
So, I mean, like, listen, I agree with you. In the injury,
why I can't see him. Like I agree with you on everything you said. I think he is going to be the top pass catcher for the Giants. I think he is a mismatch for 90% of the league out there, because you can't really purely match up a linebacker on him. You gotta have to put a safety on him. You're not going to put a corner on him. Maybe a nickel corner.
But even if, look at the size difference there between a nickel corner.
Yeah, sure. You're going to have to roll coverage his way wherever he is. But I just, until he's such an injury risk, it's the same reason why I really don't find myself drafting Lamar Jackson. And there's such an injury risk there. I draft Kittle a lot, but Kittle's played in a lot more games than Waller has.
Like I said, if you take 2019 to last year, he missed I think how many games is it last year? 8 games last year, and he missed, I think it was 6 games the year before, and then he didn't miss any games the 2 years before that. I mean, Kittle has played 1 full season in his career, besides obviously that big knee injury that he had in 2020. But he's played.
Yeah, but Kittle's played 15 games, 16 games, 14 games, and had the 1 season in 2020 with 8 games, and then 14 games, 15 games. Okay,
yeah, I agree.
So he's over his entire career, he's missed less games than Waller has in the last 2 seasons combined.
Agree. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I mean, I'm just saying the tight end position, even Mark Andrews hasn't, he's played 2 full seasons out of his 5 seasons too. Right. It's like, to me, Kels is the only one that has been that consistent, that really gets in there and plays.
And this is why I've said, like, I would draft and I did this in every one of my drafts that we did in the Mockathon that we that if it wasn't Kels, Andrews, Kittle, or Hawkinson, any other tight end that I draft, I would be drafting a second tight end because I don't trust either the injury concerns or I don't trust the fact that they're going to be consistent enough. With Waller, it's not going to be the consistency. He's not in that category. He's not with the guys like Schultz, where I don't think he's going to be able to be consistent every week, or Njoku. He's a much more talented athlete than they are. However, he can't stay healthy, and until he has a full season. In recent, you're going back to prior to COVID, numbers.
No, during
where he stayed healthy.
It was during COVID, 2020 and 2019.
Right.
We're not far removed here. All I'm saying is, and listen, I will agree with you on one point, and it is the fact that if I am drafting Waller, I am going to draft another tight end, but I'm also not going to fade him because I didn't get one of the top guys. Because to me, he's the number 3 guy out there. I'll let people take Pitts over him in front of me. I'll let people take Hawkinson over in front of me because what he can do in comparison to them, Hawkinson's not going to get 145 targets. Like how many tight ends in the league would see 145 targets? And to me, it's him.
Hawkinson's in the best passing offense in the league.
Correct. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Hawkinson. I'm just saying there is a realistic opportunity for Daniel Jones to throw 145 targets to Darren Waller this year, just like he got in 2020. And if he can do that, there's not another tight end besides maybe Travis Kelce out there that's going to get that many opportunities because everybody else actually has legitimate weapons around them. Baltimore got Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, and Rashad Bateman. Besides Saquon Barkley, who does Waller have to compete with? A bunch of B level wide receivers that are talented. And this is not knocking the Giants receivers because I think they're good and I like the squad and I love what the coaches have done with them. But you can't go out there and tell me you have a number 1 wide receiver on that team. You
don't, and that's what plays into him
exactly. If he went in another situation where he wasn't the alpha, then I wouldn't have him as my number 3. I would have him closer to my if he was in the same situation as Hawkinson, I would rather have Hawkinson. But the ceiling is so much higher with a guy like Waller because of not only his situation's baked into it for me, and the fact that the targets and what he could do.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that plays into it with how defenses, knowing that there's no one on the outside, that it's just a bunch of B-list guys, right? Do you think coverage is now going to shift towards Waller? And then if it does, if he's getting the double teams, if he's getting the over top coverage, if they're going to move a safety and shift the safety to kind of follow him around and give them a more cover 2 look with an safety over top.
I think they'll have a safety over top of him sometimes, but then that's why they go and they draft. They get him. They draft Jalen Hyatt, who you take the safety over to Waller, bye-bye on that one-on-one. He's gonna burn your corner unless you got a legitimate speedster out there. Now, they're going to be playing some tough corners in this season too as well. But then you get Saquon coming out the backfield too. So now you're like, if you have a corner covering, now you got Saquon open against a linebacker. That's a complete mismatch again. But
he's playing against a linebacker anyway. It's not that
his average depth of target last year was terrible because he wasn't linebackers covering every single time, and it was all swing passes and little screen passes. Like this he opens up this entire offense that they haven't had an opportunity to do before. And you love Hodgins. I know you do.
I do.
And like Richie James was fantastic last year. And so I think the Giants are going to find ways, and 145 targets, regardless if he's getting top coverage or not, he has a chance to pull down 100 receptions for a tight end. That's fantastic. I want that opportunity on my fantasy team. And again, this is one trick that I've been doing. I've been drafting him, and then I've been in the 7th or 8th round. If I'm happy with my studs around me, I'll jump up on Dalton Kincaid as my backup.
Sure.
Because the upside for Kincaid is another opportunity.
That's what I would do. If I were to ever draft Waller, I would have to draft another guy. I'd probably get Kincaid, Njoku, Everett.
I would go Laporta. I would go Porta, yeah. And I'm getting higher on Musgrave too, which you could get even later on in Green Bay. That's what I would do. But again,
you can get Musgrave for free.
Yeah, but what I just think the ceiling for him can put him at tight end 1 to tight end 2, if he gets the numbers he's supposed to get.
Sure.
So that's all. I mean, that's the one guy that you and I have been arguing on here, but we're not too far off on it. but it's just, yeah, I'm a little bit more there. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. That goes over the players we agree on, the players we differ on. You let us know if you agree or differ with one of us on these players. We'd love to hear your comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that notification button so you see all the content. And again, being the season around the corner, we are going to be loading up 3 episodes a week. We're going to have our Monday drop, our Tuesday drop that gives you your waiver wire picks. It gives you our recap of the weekend. We have our Thursday drop that'll give you our starts and sits for Thursday and the Thursday night game preview, and we'll give you a Saturday drop as well for you to see all our starts and sits, sleepers, and possible busts for the weekend. To get all your advice to beat your leagues, don't forget to hit that notification button.
The trifecta.
Hey, we're gonna give you what we can here. Thanks for tuning in. By the way,
guys, that wasn't me dabbing. I sneezed and muted my mic, just to let you guys know, all right? I'm not that hip, all right? We got gray in our beard.
Don't let them fake you. It was a dab. Thanks for tuning in. See you at the end of the week. Bye.